Like Ada Limon, my husband Joe was born with scoliosis. His early childhood was filled with doctor visits and the prayers of his Latina mother, grandmother, and aunts. They used chants, prayers, and even spells to try to prevent the inevitable. But the inevitable did happen. When he was 12, Joe's spine was so curved, so S-shaped, that it made him 6 inches shorter than he should have been. And one of his lungs was crushing. He was flown to Chicago by the Shriners, who paid for everything and saved his life. Then his mother and her family became even more protective. The protection of mothers can be amazing. And Joe, in some ways, was under his mother's raincoat, blissfully unaware of the sacrifices and hard choices that she and his father made. But my dear mother-in-law was also aware that she didn't want to smother her son just entering his teens. She didn't want to rob him of the ability to be self-directed. And she especially didn't want to kill his creativity. I didn't have the same kinds of physical challenges that Joe had, but my mother was also aware that I was the most creative of her 4 kids, always making something while my siblings were outside playing. It was the characteristic about me that she loved most and probably still loves most. So she just wanted to do her best to not tamp down my creativity. Even when I was an architect working for her as my client. My parents now live in the second house that I designed for them 20 years apart. The first time around, I was 18 and she was controlling, nervous that I'd make a mess of such a big investment, and the result was okay. The second time around, she gave me a very strict budget and a long list of needs. But she gave me carte blanche with the layout, the style, and all of the finishes. In the process, she learned something that I already knew, that the more limitations you have, the more creative you have to be as a designer. Limitations of budget, size, space, building codes, zoning regulations, and the client's program itself force a designer to get really creative. And in my opinion, that's when the best results occur. What I knew that she was learning was that perfect can be the enemy of good. That in shooting for perfection, we miss the opportunity to do really cool things. Things that push the envelope of form and function. Things that stand out. Often those things of beauty and character are the things that are less than perfect, like the patina of age or the quirkiness of something unexpected. Here's a great example. In 1895, French brothers Auguste and Louis Lumière revolutionized entertainment by inventing the cinematograph. I don't know how to pronounce cinematograph. A portable 3-in-1 device that's camera, developer, and projector all rolled into one. And they introduced it with a 57-second film that influenced countless movie makers for generations. So 100 years later, 40 movie directors from around the world were invited to produce their own 57-second short films using the original cinematograph. All in one shot, just like the original. And there were other limitations, like no sound. So for 39 of the directors, the limitations inspired them to keep it simple. So they focused on one short scene or one character. And the movies were good. They were really good. But one of the 40 was a surreal standout. David Lynch, who wrote and directed Eraserhead, Twin Peaks, and other movies, made a film called Premonitions Following an Evil Deed. It was dreamlike, with multiple characters in micro scenes filmed on adjoining stage sets. And as the camera panned slowly across them, transitions were blurred by puffs of smoke in front of the camera. I recently looked at some of the 40 films, including Lynch's, where other directors allowed the limitations to dictate simplicity. There was a kind of uniformity across the movies, a sameness that came to be familiar. Collectively, they became a kind of predictable genre unto themselves. But David Lynch allowed the limitations to spark the greatest innovation, the greatest complexity. It kind of reminded me of AI. I don't know about you, but I can spot artificial intelligence a mile away most of the time. Whether it's a fake news story or real news story turned into something, or a social media post, or images of creative work ranging from clothes to gardens. There's a sameness to the work. Narratives have a similar cadence and tone, like they could be read by that 1940s style narrator that we hear everywhere. And images have similar arrangements and color saturation. It all seems sort of perfect at first glance. Then you notice that something is really off. Not the imperfect charm of quirkiness. Things are wrong. Like incorrect statements, dangerous leaps in logic, or people with 3 arms. I've heard a lot of hype from some corners that AI is going to change the world. I've heard that processing all that data uses shocking amounts of electricity, and I totally believe that if it continues expanding at this speed, our electric rates are going to skyrocket. I've also heard that it's going to replace human thinking and take over jobs. Take over the whole world in an anthropomorphic play of violence and greed. I don't know, I'm kind of agnostic on that. Personally, I find that AI can be super helpful. I was telling the worship committee and worship assistants a few weeks ago that when I first started preaching 25 years ago, a lot of the research that I did required the help of a really good librarian. I'd go into the library saying something like, I'd like to find a children's story that teaches a lesson about fill in the blank. Hope, faith, unconditional love, commitment, whatever. Or I could go to the theological library on the Berkeley campus and ask for resources from the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, any sacred text. And the librarian and I would talk about my sermonic goals, and I'd go back a day or 3 later, and they'd have a stack of resources for me that I'd have to plow through to turn into something that was mine. A proposition that lived, as I like to say, at the intersection of 2 ideas. If I was really lucky, I could find stories or verses using a really good concordance, an alphabetical index of key words or phrases in the Bible. A concordance is a kind of manual search engine in countless volumes that live at the theological library. And there's a separate concordance for every translation of the Bible. It fills a room. Now, I don't have to go to the library. As much as I worry that I might be leading to the redundancy of real live librarians, all I need is ChatGPT. I can ask it all the same questions I used to ask the librarian. I could ask a question like, how is motherhood affected by artificial intelligence? And I bet it would give me some interesting answers. But where's the fun in that? Heck, I could just put a few parameters and have ChatGPT write my sermon for me. But I know they weren't my words and ideas. You would know that they're not my words and ideas because it would have that familiar sound that everything written by AI has. So I use AI the way I use GPS, not as my only guide, my only source of intelligence, but as a tool. Sure, during the months between Memorial Day and Labor Day, GPS can get me between here and home with the least amount of traffic and save me an hour. But I don't let it think for me. I don't let it determine where or when or why I go anywhere. It's just a tool. The best use for GPS, I think, is a safety net. Joe and I have always done this. We plan a short day trip, a getaway, and we pick a spot where we haven't been before, and we go, using our guts to guide us there. And sure, it might take a while to get there, but we enjoy the journey. We stop along the way, we meet people, we see sights. Then we use the GPS to return home as efficiently as possible, or to get us out of a jam somewhere along the line if we get really lost. Joseph Dweck is the Europe director at Greenmantle, a microeconomic and geopolitical risk consultancy. He also writes for a German news magazine and The Guardian in the UK. He told the story of relying on GPS, which is a form of AI, by the way, to navigate his way through France without really giving it any critical thought until he and his companion found themselves on a dirt road at the edge of a cliff in the middle of a construction site, in the middle of nowhere. Dweck asserts that AI has become our priest and our feudal overlord. He wrote, "The German philosopher Immanuel Kant famously defined the Enlightenment as man's emergence from his self-imposed immaturity. Immaturity, he wrote, is the inability to use one's understanding without guidance from another. For centuries, that other directing human thought and life was often the priest, the monarch, the feudal overlord, the ones claiming to act as God's voice on earth. In trying to understand natural phenomena, why volcanoes erupt, why the seasons change, humans looked to God for answers. In shaping the social world from economics to love, religion served as the guide. Humans, Kant argued, always had the capacity for reason. They just always hadn't had
Here, I can do it.
Did the sound go out?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for trying.
We're working on it.
Thank you. We can look and listen afterwards if we need to.
Well, we're recording, so
Oh no. I see what you mean. Darn.
this doesn't show very well.
Talking, where is the person talking?
Here. I gotta go back up to here.
Mhm.
is he?
Mhm.
Show thumbnail. I don't even see him now.
Need to have someone else in the, yeah, we need help, help, help.
Yeah,
I know. Oh,
We don't
Hunt
see 'em.
Forrester. I don't know who
Can't
the.
hear you. We can't
Oh.
hear you.
Oh, you got it.